Lesson 5-5, adding and subtracting unlike fractions. And in this lesson, you learn to add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators. Why is it important? Because you'll add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators when you analyze graphs. Okay, let's take a look at this activity. You can add or subtract fractions with unlike denominators by changing them into fractions with like denominators. So in this case, we'll make a model that represents the sum of 1/4 and 1/2. First, shade 1/4, and this is 1/4 right here. Okay, and then we want to shade 1/2 using a second color to represent 1/4 was 1/2. So this is your 1/4. Okay, and this is your 1/2. So if you notice, what fraction of the model is shaded? Okay, obviously 3/4 is shaded. What is the least common denominator of 4 and 2? Okay, and the least common denominator is the same as the LCM of 4 and 2, which is in this case 4. And write an addition sentence equivalent to 1/4 plus 1/2 by using the least common denominator and simply find the sum. So if we use the least common denominator, which is 4, okay, and we rename our fractions, we still have 1/4 plus 2/4, which is the same as 1/2 in this case, will be equal to 3/4. Okay, so if you have two fractions with unlike denominators, 1/4 and 1/2, using a model, we can add them to become 3/4. But there's an easier way to do this without using a model. Okay, the activity that we just did leads us to the following rule for adding and subtracting unlike fractions. To find the sum and difference of two fractions with unlike denominators, rename the fractions with a common denominator, and then add or subtract and simplify. Okay, one way to rename unlike fractions before you add or subtract is to use the LCD. Okay, remember that LCD is the same as finding the LCM of your denominators. Solve each equation, write the solution in simplest form. We have m equals 7/9 plus 11/12. Okay, let's estimate first that 7/9 is close to 1. Okay, and 11/12 is close to 1 as well. So our answer should be close to 2. Okay, and let's start. We want to find the LCD of 9 and 12, or we want to find the we want to find the LCD of 7/9 and 11/12, or we want to find the LCM of 9 and 12. And let's review how to find the LCM. Okay, 9 and 12, we find the prime factors of 9, which are 3 and 3, prime factors of 12, which are 2 times 2 times 3. Then remember, we circle the common factors, and if we only circle the common factor, that is just our GCF, but again, we're not looking for a GCF, so we circle what's left, or we bring down what's left. So that would be 3, bring down the 2, and bring down the other 2. Okay, so if you notice, the LCD, okay, of 7/9 and 11/12 will be equal to 36. Okay, so we will use this number as our denominator. So now we have 36 as our denominator. So finding equivalent fraction, finding an equivalent fraction of 7/9, which will have a denominator of 36, we simply multiply this by 4, and we need to multiply this by 4 as well. Okay, and if you're basically multiplying by 4/4, you're multiplying it by 1. So this becomes 28/36, and that's how this came about right there. Okay, and that's why you got this 28/36. And then that's the same thing, 11/12. What's an equivalent fraction of 11/12 with the denominator of 36? Okay, that would be 33/36, because like what we did here, we multiplied 11 by 3 and 12 by 3 to get to 36 as a denominator. Okay, so renaming each fraction of the LCD, Now we have like denominators, so we simply add 28 plus 33 will give us 61 over 36, or in simplest form, or not in simplest form, or as a mixed number, 1 and 25 over 36. Okay, let's take a look at letter B. 1/4 minus 2/3, okay, equals A. We want to find the LCD of 1/4 and 2 over 3, or we want to find the LCM of 4 and 3. Remember that if you have two numbers whose GCF is 1, okay, their LCM will be the product of their numbers. Again, if you have two numbers whose GCF is 1, the LCM will be the product of their numbers. So in this case, the GCF of 4 and 3 is 1. So you have to simply multiply 4 times 3. That will give you 12 as the LCD. Okay? So your least common denominator would be 12. And we simply have to rename 1/4. Okay? So in this case, what did you multiply 4 to get to 12? You multiplied it by 3. And that's the reason why this is 3, because you multiply this by 3. In the same manner, what did you multiply 3 to get to 12? You multiply this by 4. In the same manner, you multiply this by 4 as well. You get that. Okay? So let me erase all of that. There you go. And we have 3 over 12 minus 8 over 12. Okay? And the LCD, using the LCD, the difference would be negative 5 over 12. 3 minus 8 will give us negative 5 over 12. And if we want to compare that to our estimate, negative 5 over 12 is close enough to negative 1/2. Our answer checks out. Okay? Example number 2. To add and subtract mixed numbers with unlike denominators, you need to rename using the LCD. Okay, let's take a look at letter A. N equals 4 and 1/6 plus 7 and 11 over 18. Let's estimate that to be 4 plus 8. Our answer should be close to 12. Okay, so if you notice, we need to find the LCD of 1/6 and 11 over 18. So the least common denominator. Okay, in order to do that, there's another way of doing this. If you're not too proficient on the horizontal method of doing it, do it the vertical method. So you have 4 and 1/6, and you're adding 7 and 11 over 18. You want to find the LCD of 6 and 18. Okay, and the LCD is 18. And this remains 18. Sorry, 11, because you're simply multiplying it by 1. And this one you're multiplying 1/6 by 3 over 3, because that's what you multiply 6 to get to 18. So this becomes 3. Okay, adding them all up, you have 14 over 18. And then simply add 4 plus 7, that will give you 11 and 14 over 18, or 11 and 7 over 9 in simplest form. Okay, and this is what happened here. 4 and 3 over 18 plus 7 and 11 over 18 will give us 11 and 14 over 18, or 11 and 7 over 9. Okay, again using the LCD, which is 1/6 renamed to 3 over 18. Okay, let's take a look at letter B. You have 7 and 2/3 minus 9 and 1 over 12. Let's estimate this first. Okay, 8 minus 9 is roughly around negative 1. And if we do this, we want to find the LCD of 3 and 12. Okay, let's do the same thing here. Let me erase this so I have room. So let's do this vertically. 7 and 2/3 minus 9 and 1/12. Now if you notice, okay, look at the estimate. 8 minus 9 equals negative 1. That means this is 8. plus negative 9 equals negative 1. Going back to our rules of integers. Okay, going back to our song, same sign, adding, keep, different signs, subtract, keep the sign of the higher number, then it'll be exact. To be able to get to 1, what we did here is that we did 9 minus 8 is equal to 1, and keep the sign of the higher number. The higher number is 9, and the sign is negative in this case, so we put a negative 1 to make it negative 1. So in effect, we're looking for the greater number before we subtract. Okay? Again, we're looking for the greater number, subtracting the lesser number. Okay, let's see how this works. So if that's the case, let's take a look at our problem. We have 7 and 2/3 minus 9 and 1 over 12. Okay, we know that we are subtracting because we have different signs, negative 9 and 1/12 and positive 7 over and 2/3. But before we subtract, we need to find out which is the greater number if we disregard the signs of both numbers. So if we disregard the signs of both numbers, we know that 9 and 1/12 is greater than 7 and 2/3. So in that case, we need to put 9 and 1/12 on top, and we need to subtract 7 and 2/3. Okay? Now we know for a fact that our difference would be a negative. Okay? So let's look at this one. Let's find the LCD of 12 and 3. LCD would be 12, and that would remain 1. And you multiply this by 4 over 4, because that's what you multiply 3 to get to 12, and this becomes 8. Okay? Now going back to our borrowing. Okay, you cannot subtract 8 from 1 in this case. It's a fraction. So what do? We borrow 1 from 9. This becomes an 8. And the one that we borrowed, we add to 1 over 12. So we added 12 over 12, which is also equal to 1, which is the one that we borrowed from 9. Okay? So this becomes now 8 and, okay, going back down here, we rename it to become 8 and 13 over 12 minus 7 and 8 over 12. Now we can subtract 8 from 13, that's a 5 over 12, and 8 minus 7 is 1. So the answer would be 1 and 5 over 12. And that's exactly what happens here. Okay? We renamed 8 over 12 minus 9 and 1/12 using LCDs. Okay? And then we simply renamed 9 over 1/12 to become negative 8 and 13 over 12, like what we did here. We subtracted and we got negative 1 and 5 over 12. There's another way of doing this. Again, what I told you. You can convert them both into improper fractions. And if you convert them both into improper fractions, there is no need to borrow anything. Okay? So if you convert negative 7 and 2/3 as an improper fraction, okay, negative 7 and 2/3 would be 23 over 3. Okay, 21 plus 2 is 23. And 9 times 12, okay, will be 18. Okay, 9 times 12 plus 1, so let's just do this. Okay, so 9 times 12, that would be 18, carry 1, 9, 108. Then we add the 1, that'll be 109 over 12. So you can use these fractions now without borrowing, okay, to be able to solve that, to get the difference. But then again, you still have to find the LCD, and in this case the LCD is still 12, and you still multiply the numerator of this mixed number, or this fraction this time, by this numerator by 4, and we keep 109. Okay, and you'll end up with 17 over 12. Okay, after you do this, because 23 times 4 would give you 92 minus 109 over 12, and that will give you negative 17 over 12, and negative 17 over 12 is actually that thing right there. Okay, so a few ways to do this, a little bit messy, but you see how you can do this in different ways. Okay, you can get the difference of those two mixed numbers in two different ways. Okay, so let's take a look at the last example. Stock market prices are expressed as mixed numbers. News that sales of a certain software were brisk after its August 2000 debut sent stocks of technological companies up. On Monday, September 11, 2000, one company's stock rose from $1.38 to close at $45 one fourth. What was the opening price for the company for that day? Again, word problem requires a let statement. So let P represent opening price. Then write an equation for this one. And naturally, the equation would be $45 and one fourth minus 1 and 3/8. Okay, using what we know, they have unlike denominators. So we simply find the LCD, which is 8. Okay, and rename 1/4 with the LCD, which is 8, to become 2/8. Okay, but since if you notice 3 is greater than 2, so that means we need to borrow 1 from 45, so that becomes now 44. Okay, so we rename this to become 44 and 10 over 8. Okay, minus 1 and 3/8, end up with 43 and 7/8. So the opening price was $43.7/8. Okay, let's do this vertically. Okay, 45 and one fourth minus 1 and 3/8. Okay, LCD is 8. Okay, we don't touch this because we only multiply it by 1 over 1, but we multiply 4 by 2 to get to 8, so we multiply it by 2 over 2, so this becomes 2. Okay, and if you notice, you cannot subtract 3 from 2 in this case as a fraction, so what do? You borrow 1 from 45, this becomes 44. Okay, and you simply add, okay, the one that you borrowed, which is 8 over 8. Okay, so this has now been renamed to 44 and 2 plus 8 is 10, 44 and 10 over 8. And that's how you got that difference. Okay, and that is the end of our lesson. Thank you for watching.